I am going anonymous because my husband is, and he might be on here. It was the yearly Christmas party. I had hoped my husband would be home by the party, but they had it early that year, the first week of December. My husband was working in Asia and wouldn't be home for another 2 weeks. He had been there for more than a month. We have a couple of kids in elementary and middle school. Between work and taking care of the kids, I was exhausted. They were staying at my mom's, and it was nice to have the night off. I had some drinks with coworkers, and then once I started to feel tipsy and wanted to do the responsible thing and go home. I had arrived by taxi and was planning on taking one home. Since the party was in a rented hotel lobby, cabs were always coming and going. A supervisor stopped me on my way out and asked me to stay for one more drink. He is a handsome guy, successful, confident, and he always found an excuse to pull me on to his projects. I would be lying if I said there hadn't been sexual tension between us for a long time. In the couple of years I had worked with him, there had been nothing other than a couple of lunch meetings and some slightly flirtatious behavior. Mostly just compliments. He asked me to save him from the boredom and have a drink with him. I agreed to just one. So we went over to the bar area where he bought me a drink. I think he said it was a Godiva white chocolate martini. It was good and it was strong. I nursed it because I was already feeling drunk. We made small talk, and like usual, I was really enjoying my time with him. I'm not making excuses, but I had felt so lonely and overworked at that time in my life. When our drinks were nearing the end, I said that I needed to go. He said that he had a room upstairs. It wasn't unusual for staff to rent rooms at the hotel or in the area for the annual Christmas party. There is always a lot of alcohol. I said I didn't think it was a good idea, and he reassuringly said, "No, really, I haven't had this much fun in a long time. We'll have an after party." I knew it wasn't a good idea, but I was enjoying myself. I remember feeling like I was alive for the first time in a long time. He grabbed one of our coworkers and told them to invite certain people that he named to his suite. He and I rode up the elevator together. He let me into the room, and he put his hand on my lower back. Well, my memory was getting foggy, but his hand slid down way too low. Like there was no way to even pretend it was an accident too low. I turned to him and said something to the effect of, "Hey, watch it, mister." To which he laughed and said it was an accident. We both knew better. Everything in me wanted to be there, and I knew I should leave. I should have, but I didn't. Soon other people arrived, a half a dozen or so, and there was music, some dancing, and a few more drinks. My memory is totally blacked out for a little while. Next thing I remember was the last person leaving with her husband and asking if I was going to be okay. My supervisor said he would make sure that I get home safe. Next, I remember that we were alone and he asked me to dance with him. I was too drunk to stand straight, so I was hanging on him, and my next memory was him kissing me with his hands up my shirt. I want to say I wasn't an active participant in this, but I was rubbing on him too. I blacked out again. My next memory is lying there totally naked with him on top of me having sex. I started to feel more sober at that moment, and it occurred to me that I was cheating on my husband. I must have tensed up because he told me to relax and enjoy it. I said something like, "I shouldn't be doing this." Always the smooth operator. Without even pausing, he responded by telling me that nothing is going to change what has already happened. that I might as well enjoy it now. And enjoy it, I did. I woke up some hours later with him holding me from behind. I was riddled with guilt for what had just happened. I got up and started to scout around for my clothes. He woke up and got up with me and hugged me from behind. The blinds were open and I could see daybreak was just beginning. My head was still spinning. He said good morning and started to feel me up. He began kissing me on my neck. I said I needed to go and I pushed him off. I scooped up my clothes and then put them on. I couldn't find my panties anywhere, so I left in a dress with nothing underneath. I looked over and he was dressed too, and he said I should take a shot. It would make me feel better. I needed it, so I did, and almost instantly felt better and buzzed again. He walked me downstairs and tried to talk me into having breakfast with him. I told him I had to get home to my family. He knows I'm married. He has met my husband at least 10 times. I felt I needed to say it, though, to remind him. I got in the cab and went home. Once I worked through my feelings over the next week or so, I realized that my guilt was more than just feeling bad for my husband. I love him and I don't want to hurt him. I don't regret the sex, though. It was hot and I lived out some fantasies. I've never had a one-night stand before. I had never slept with a boss before, and I had never cheated before. I grew up pretty conservative and didn't even allow a man to give me oral sex until I was 24. My husband was only my third partner and the only man I had given oral to. Later, bits of that night came back to me, and I remember getting and giving it when he positioned us so that we were in each other's crotches. I don't regret the sex at all, but I kind of wish it was with a stranger. I decided that telling my husband would only make me feel better, so, other than a few friends, I've kept this a secret. Obviously, I think some of my coworkers know. 2 things worried me after that night, though. First was that I had not been taking birth control because my husband had a vasectomy. So I sweated that out for a couple of weeks. The second was that I knew, eventually, that my husband was going to see him again. I was afraid that somehow secretly he would know, but it's been a couple of years and he has not found out. I hope he never does. Has anybody else experienced something like this? I know in affairs, and with my training, there is the accidental affair. And this is a prime example of what happens in an accidental affair, even though many people say this is no accident. And you're right. She knew she shouldn't have been there, and she chose to go up to the room knowing those risks instead of just leaving. But they call that, with the one-night stand, the accidental affair with alcohol and all of that involved. It's still not an excuse, but when I'm working with people on different types of affairs, this is a situation we have to work through. So if her husband was to find out, they would have to deal with that, because it wasn't an ongoing thing. It wasn't an addiction. It was, I'm drunk, I'm lonely, and I made a poor choice. I've never had this happen, and I know that still to this day I'm haunted by my past. When I was married to my husband that had passed away, I would have nightmares, and it's continued on with the Marine, that I did it with somebody that I know, and nobody that I would even think about. You know, it just comes into my head, apparently, and I panic. Oh my God, I've cheated. I can't go back. I can't. And I'm so thankful when I wake up, because I did not cheat. And it was all just a bad dream, but I think it's my own past scaring me, or working with everybody that, you know, because I deal with this infidelity stuff day to day to day. And so I can't imagine actually waking up and saying, oh shit, now what? In her situation. I'm just thankful it's been a dream. But have you guys had that happen? I'd like to know a little bit about it. Doesn't have to be a disaster. I'm just curious if anybody's had a situation like this, like hers. I would like to learn a little bit more about what happened. But I want to move on to the comments. So I'm going to say if it was from a man or a woman and what they had to say. So hearing the story as you heard it, and being fairly open-minded as most of you are by listening to the show because you can relate in some form or another, I want you to share quickly the judgment that happens. And granted, this is on an infidelity page where people talk about cheating or have been cheated on. So the first comment was, let's see here, a man. I think you put enough detail in this that if your husband does happen to read it, he will be able to put 2 and 2 together. You have some splaining to do, Lucy. Her name isn't Lucy, it's just from the TV show I Love Lucy. And a woman commented, "Oh my God, that is too friggin' funny." Another person posted, I don't know if it was male or female, and they said, "I feel bad for your husband. Keeping secrets is becoming a new way to sustain the relationship like marriage. People are falsely involved and they call it funking love." Funking love, okay. By doing so, they are insulting both love and the institution of marriage. And a man commented on that by saying, "Yeah, this chick sucks. I hope her husband left her and she's miserable. Truly hate cheating hoes." Then a woman commented on that one and said, "No, I disagree with you. This lady did something which she has regretted since and has no intention of ever repeating. She lives with her guilt and punishes herself enough. What would be gained by telling her husband, unburdening herself, sharing her guilt, and making him feel bad and insecure in the process, ruining what is otherwise a good marriage? I am very clear. I don't cheat. I believe in monogamy and the sanctity of marriage, but I'm also a realist. In the ideal world, that is the way it should be, but sometimes things happened, and were my partner, husband, or other half to make a genuine mistake that would never be repeated, I would not want to know. The damage caused to the relationship would be irreversible. The trust would be broken and very difficult to repair. Anytime he was late home or I rang and couldn't find him, my imagination would go into overdrive, so my newfound insecurities would ruin the relationship even more than his infidelity, which I knew nothing about. Finally, and I've given this some thought, likewise, were I ever to cheat and the guilt would kill me, but I would never tell anyone out of respect for my partner. I would not really want to make someone else a party to my deceit or have to lie to my partner on my behalf. I like the way this woman wrote all of that, because I was in that situation where all of a sudden now everybody else has to lie for me. It's, yeah, been there. Okay, so back to the original story and a new comment from a man. First, your supervisor took advantage of his position in your inebriated state. Further, if you don't regret the sex and you still have the same supervisor, you will probably cheat again. Second, your husband deserves better. Too many people know what happened, and sooner or later he will find out. He will probably find out through either one of those few friends that you told, a disgruntled coworker, your supervisor's next victim, or someone will put a bug in your supervisor's wife's ear. That's tricky to say. This information is already water cooler gossip at your workplace and on the grapevine in your circle of friends. Your husband does not know it yet, but you have already humiliated him by making an object of derision and or pity for a number of the people he knows and interacts with. What's he going to think when he finds out that your boss has been laughing at him behind his back and probably to his face? And you still work with that dirtbag. So don't be surprised if your husband does not believe you when you try to tell him that it was just a one-night stand, particularly if he finds out from somebody else. Please tell your husband before it's too late to save your marriage. I'm sure you will get different advice from some others, but keep it in mind that others who cheat are likely to advise you not to tell.